These match highlights are brought to you in association with the IRB.
This week's match is from the first round of the Scottish Hydroelectric Super Cup between Hawks and Boroughmuir at Old Anniesland, and the tournament is being played under the IRB experimental law variations.
This particular exercise is part of the ongoing review by the International Rugby Board of the laws of the game. Our remit on the Laws Project Group is to make the laws of rugby simpler, easier to understand, easier for the players, easier for the referees, easier for the coaches, and above all, more easily understood by the spectators. And as part of that, we would then be trying to take out the cannot do's from the laws and introduce more can do's for the players, to give the decision making to the players, to take away some of the subjectivity, and above all, to make it an easier understood game for the global expansion of rugby. All of this is, of course, an experiment, and I've got to emphasise that. Some of the things that we'll see being trialled in the Scottish Hydroelectric Super Cup with the Premier 1 clubs may never be introduced, but we are trialling them and we're working them on the field rather than doing it hypothetically and theoretically. What this means is that the players will have to adjust very quickly, the match officials will have to adjust very quickly, and we think it'll take, and we've seen this down in Stellenbosch, it takes a couple of weeks for the players to get onside and tuned in. After that, then I think you'll see a much faster game and a much more easily flowing game, a better spectacle for rugby.
8 minutes into the match, Elgin O'Donnell opened the scoring for Boroughmuir with a penalty, but then after 13 minutes, well, it was pretty harum-scarum stuff, but the players seemed to be adapting pretty well to the new laws. And Rory Cooper, well, that's the sort of try you expect to see scored in September, not in the depths of darkest January. O'Donnell, no problem with the conversion, and after 13 minutes, Boroughmuir 10 points to 0 ahead. And Rob Dixon making sure the front rows are familiar with the new engagement process. It sounds awfully official, doesn't it? And Callum Cussiter bustling about there with Stephen Biggott. Ball out to Max Evans, pops it up, and there was right on his elbow Mike Adamson to take the pass and go over for Hawks' first try, which he converted himself. And now here was an example of the ELVs. That ball from Cussiter to Haddon. Although Haddon was inside his 22, he couldn't kick directly into touch. And although Rory Kerr fumbled the ball initially, his pass found Max Evans, and the jinky winger was off on a mazy run. Look at that, all the way through, and it was the final pass up to John Fitzpatrick. Now that was a try to remember for the big Hawks flanker. Boroughmuir again giving the ball plenty of air. James White off down the wing. Knocked over by a combination of Max Evans and Rory Kerr, but Boroughmuir arriving in numbers. The ball out from one flanker to another, Capaldi to Hollywood. Again out to Rory Cooper, and looking like nothing on, but all of a sudden the gap's appearing in front of the Boroughmuir captain, and in for a cracking try off his own wing and in under the posts. Scott Haddon converted. Muir went in 20 points to 14 ahead at half time after a pulsating first half.
These match highlights are brought to you in association with the IRB. Scottish Rugby Radio is now updated every Monday. Join Stuart Cameron and his guests for the news, match reports and expert comment on the Scottish game. ScottishRugbyRadio.com, now every Monday.
Into the second half, and Muir straight on to the attack. The ball out to Rory Cooper, causing all sorts of problems for the Hawks defence. Lovely wee flip-up ball there to his opposite winger, James White. Hold down just short, and then Max Evans snaffling that one on his own line to clear downfield. And here was an example that Greg Cottrell had read the ELV laws, that quick throw in. Not quite coming to anything, but getting the ball back out. And although Sean Hollywood knocked on, that just showed the sort of commitment that Boroughmuir had to fast-flowing rugby. But then, with 9 minutes of the second half gone, new laws or not, it just showed that there's always a place for the big mobile prop as Freddie Lake crashed over for that try off Cammy Ward's pass. No problem for Scott Haddon to slot the conversion. 27 points to 14. Boroughmuir ahead. But Hawks getting into the spirit of things, playing a high-octane level of rugby. Kenny Sinclair popping the ball up there. And Hawks now threatening on the Boroughmuir line. And finally, the ball from Murray Strang to Max Evans, throwing off 1, 2, 3 tacklers and crashing over the line. And stand up for the Glasgow Hawks is not a chant you hear too often in the douce environments of Glasgow G12. Murray Strang slotted the conversion without any problem. And Hawks were back in the game at 21-27. They kept the pressure up. And into the final quarter, long kick downfield by Scott Haddon, taken by Strang, looking for support inside, a huge pass across field. And Max Evans again asking all sorts of questions of the Boroughmuir defence, finally halted by Rory Cooper and Sean Hollywood. Ball coming back quickly, up there to Gavin Morris. Morris thundering up towards the Boroughmuir line. Kenny Sinclair to Murray Strang, and out eventually to big Alan Kelly, and right on his elbow there was number 8 Greg Francis for a terrific support try. The back row in tandem there, and the Ulster supporters giving it one last blast before heading along the road to Hughenden to support their team against Glasgow Warriors. Mike Adamson slotted the conversion, and that was Hawks 1 point in the lead, 28-27, going into the final 10 minutes. But in a game like this, well, it's almost like watching sevens. You didn't know what was going to happen next, and certainly you couldn't write off either side. And Sean Hollywood with a tremendous break there, long ball inside, finding Callum Cussiter. Cussiter's with Cooper there, Cooper back to Hollywood. This was just like watching rugby in the middle of the summer. Terrific free-flowing stuff with two teams who must have been just about dead on their feet. Callum Cussiter to Scott Haddon, long ball out there, picked up by Greg Cotterill. And oh yeah, you could tell that one or two of the tacklers were just getting a wee bit tired there as Cammy Ward crashed over for what proved to be the winning try. Into injury time. Under the new laws, those hands in there are legitimate, and the ball coming back on the Boroughmuir side. Callum Cussiter's long clearance kick downfield, and that was the final play of the game. Rob Dixon blew his whistle. The players hardly even celebrating, they were so exhausted.
Certainly different, certainly new. I think it's a bit like starting refereeing again. We were lucky, we had two positive sides today in Hawks and Boroughmuir, and they certainly kept the ball in play much longer than you would normally expect. I think there's two or three things we'll need to look at. I think players are inclined to go off their feet at the breakdown more. I think it will encourage fast rucking that we used to see in Scotland, because if you drive beyond the ball and the contact, you'll unquestionably win the ball. But we certainly saw more action from the backs on what's a pretty cold January day, less penalties, and I think overall a more positive attitude. It's more tiring. The retirement age for referees might have to come down, I think. I don't know about players.
Thoroughly entertaining. I mean, both sides sharing 60 points speaks for itself, I think. You know, thoroughly entertaining, an open game. Obviously it's going to take sides a bit of time to adjust to the new laws. I thought Boroughmuir did that to great effect, to be perfectly honest. We're slightly slower in one or two areas, but thoroughly enjoyable rugby. I think the crowd who were here today would be delighted to watch that quality of rugby week in, week out.
So the first match in the Scottish Hydroelectric Super Cup producing a high-octane game between two sides who put on a show of fast-flowing and entertaining rugby for the supporters. And we also showed that the experimental law variations could be going to provide some very, very exciting rugby in the next few weeks. This is Ron Evans for Scottish Rugby Television at Old Anniesland.
These match highlights are brought to you in association with the IRB.